Flameo Hotman, I'm Jacob with ChannelFrederator, and just like you, I remember Aang as the adorably charming hero from Nickelodeon's hit series Avatar: The Last Airbender, which premiered back in 2005. But I just finished a rewatch of it a few weeks ago, and it's somehow even better than I remember it. And with the announcement of a live-action reboot of the series coming to Netflix almost 15 years later, we here at ChannelFrederator thought that this would be a pretty good time to take a trip down memory lane and look back on Michael DiMartino and Bryan Konietzko's awesome series. But before we can even get to the adventures of the gang, we have to go a little bit further back, so brace yourselves, because this is the Avatar: The Last Airbender timeline. The Era of Rava. Since the beginning of time, the spirits of light and dark have been engaged in a constant battle. These spirits are known as Rava, the spirit of light and peace, and Vatu, the spirit of darkness and chaos. Once every 10,000 years, a supernatural occurrence takes place in which the planets align and spiritual energy is greatly amplified, enveloping the Earth. During this event, Rava and Vatu engage in a battle that determines the fate of the world for the next 10,000 years. This event is known as the Harmonic Convergence. During the convergence of 19,829 years before Aang's time, Vatu destroyed the boundaries between the mortal world and the spirit world. With nothing to keep the spirits in their own world, they began migrating to the physical world, taking most of the land for themselves. These parts were known as the Spirit Wilds. Humans eventually had to split apart to seek shelter and protection on the backs of giant elemental lion turtles, and over time, many started to forget that other communities existed beyond their own lion turtle. The first Avatar. During this era, people would leave their lion turtles to hunt for food in the Spirit Wilds. In order to survive, the lion turtle would temporarily bestow the humans with the power to control, or bend, whichever of the four elements that turtle happened to possess. One day, a young man named Juan stole the art of fire from the lion turtle in order to steal food from the rich and give to the poor. He was caught, however, and banished to the Spirit Wilds permanently. Out of sympathy, though, the lion turtle allowed him to keep his firebending ability. During his banishment, Juan encountered a dragon who helped him master the art of firebending. The technique he learned from the dragon became known as the dancing dragon form. Then one day he came across two battling spirits and decided to interfere. Unfortunately, these spirits were Rava and Vatu, and because of Juan's interference, Vatu was freed to wreak havoc on the physical world. Seeking redemption, Juan teamed up with Rava and began training to master all of the elements before the next oncoming harmonic convergence. When the time came, he challenged Vatu in the name of Rava, allowing the spirit to possess his body. The two remained together during harmonic convergence, and it caused them to permanently merge together, creating the first Avatar. Literally, the human avatar of the Spirit of Light. Thanks to the Avatar's powers, the lion turtles were able to pass on their duty to protect mankind to the Avatar. Avatar 1 became the bridge between the two worlds. His task, and the task of all avatars that came after him, was to maintain balance and peace between the mortal and spiritual realms. Many years passed, and when Juan neared the end of his life, Rava assured him that their spirits would remain together throughout time. The Avatar would go on to be reincarnated in each new generation, ensuring the balance between the worlds. The Four Nations Era. As humanity left behind the cities established on the backs of the lion turtles, they began to come into contact with one another, and because humanity is humanity, wage war against each other. Juan had intervened to keep the peace in the past, but to little avail. Once he passed away and was reincarnated, the next Avatar would do the same, and thus the cycle continued. Eventually, humanity split into four different nations, dictated by their respective bending arts. They were the Water Tribes, who learned the art of waterbending by studying the moon and tides, the Earth Kingdom, whose people learned earthbending skills from the great badger moles tunneling underneath the ground, the Sun Warriors, who were taught the ancient art of firebending from the dragons themselves, and of course, the Air Nomads, who were taught by the flying bison. As centuries went by, the nations evolved. The Waterbenders split into two tribes situated at the North and South Poles, the Fire Islands were united as the Fire Nation, and the Earth King's power began to wane as civil unrest began to worsen throughout his kingdom. Meanwhile, the Air Nomads eventually expanded into four different temples, north, south, east, and west. The Fire Nation would go on to enter an era of great prosperity and modernization unlike the other nations. Avatar Roku and Crown Prince Sozin were born into the Fire Nation during this time of progress and became close friends in their childhood. Eventually, though, their friendship went sour as Avatar's gonna Avatar, and Roku became a force of balance and peace, not just among the two realms, but all of humanity as well. Conversely, Sozin dreamed of a global empire under his rule, and these ambitions led the now Fire Lord Sozin to initiate a number of reforms that militarized the country. As a result, both spirituality and respect for life rapidly declined throughout the nation, leading to the near extinction of the dragons. One might say that everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. planet. Eventually, several colonies were established in the weakened Earth Kingdom, which in turn quickly became local industrial centers. Sozin's expansionism was eventually stunted by Roku though, since all of this goes against his whole spiritual purpose. Years later though, as Roku lay dying after a failed attempt to control a volcanic eruption, he begged Sozin for help. Sozin rationalized, however, that with Roku out of the way, he would be free to continue his crusades. Blinded by his own ambition, Fire Lord Sozin left his former best friend to die. A new avatar. Raised by the monks of the Southern Air Temple, young Aang possessed a mastery in airbending. By age 10, Aang had surpassed his master in the art, and by the time he turned 12, he had invented a new airbending technique called the Air Scooter, which led to his becoming the youngest airbending master to ever live, earning him his very own blue arrow-shaped tattoos that all of the masters wore before him. It wasn't long after that the monks revealed to Aang that he was the Avatar, and that he alone was destined to master all 4 elements and bring peace to the world. Typically, this news is given once the Avatar reaches 16 years of age, however, the monks feared that a war among nations was imminent, and it didn't leave them much time to prepare. Aang immediately began to feel overwhelmed by his new responsibility though, especially once his caretakers pressured him to train harder. The only monk who was sympathetic towards Aang was the elder monk Gyatso, his airbending teacher and guardian. Whenever his training would start to take its toll, Gyatso insisted that Aang take a break and have some fun. He believed that it was vital for Aang to be allowed to grow up as a normal boy. Unfortunately, the other monks disagreed, and they decided to send Aang away to the Eastern Air Temple, where he would focus solely on training. Unbeknownst to them, though, Aang had overheard their conversation, and frightened by the new circumstances, Aang jumped on his flying bison Appa and made his escape. Aang couldn't catch a break, though, because while over the Southern Ocean, a storm caused Appa to plunge into the sea. In an incredible display of power and self-preservation, Aang surrounded himself and Appa in an air bubble, but it quickly froze into an iceberg, leaving them in a state of suspended animation. The Last Airbender.
Hey, wait a minute, that's the title of the...
100 years passed since the Avatar's disappearance, until one day 2 bickering teenagers from the Southern Water Tribe, Katara, a waterbender, and her brother Sokka, a boomerang boy, which is not a real thing, I just made that up, accidentally free Aang from his iceberg. Upon discovering that Aang is an airbender, they escort him back to the Southern Water Tribe, where he's met with many bewildered stares. As it turns out, none of them have ever seen an airbender before. No one has in over 100 years. That's because during Aang's absence, the Fire Nation waged war against the others, starting by completely wiping out all of the air nomads. The Fire Lord Sozin took advantage of an incoming comet, later dubbed Sozin's Comet for obvious reasons, to enhance his firebending abilities and storm all 4 air temples, slaughtering every monk within to ensure the death of the new Avatar, thus making Aang the last known airbender in existence. The news of all of this transpiring doesn't come lightly to Aang. It's a bit of a wake-up call, to put it lightly. Aang quickly realizes that the entire fate of the world rests on his shoulders. Not only is it his duty to defeat the Fire Nation, but it's his destiny. So to fulfill the prophecy, Aang and his new friends set off on a quest to master every bending technique while carefully evading capture by the Fire Nation, who have been in search of the missing Avatar for all these 100 years. Book 1. Water. On their journey to the North Pole in search of a waterbending teacher, Team Avatar finds themselves in a small Earth Kingdom village under attack by Heibai, a monster from the spirit world. Because Aang is the one person who can bridge the physical and spirit worlds, the villagers believe he can make peace with the spirit, so he travels to the spirit world where he's told that Avatar Roku has a message for him on the winter solstice. Aang returns and calms the attacking spirit, restoring peace to the village. In order to retrieve Roku's message, though, Team Avatar must cross into the Fire Nation waters on their way to a fire temple dubbed Roku's Temple. Before arriving at said temple, the 3 are met with a blockade of Fire Nation soldiers led by the newly promoted Admiral Zhao. They make it through, but the Fire Prince Zuko pursues them through the blockade. While inside the Fire Temple, Aang manages to enter the sanctuary after narrowly escaping capture by Zuko and the other Fire Sages, who instead capture Sokka and Katara. He's confronted by the spirit of Avatar Roku, who warns Aang about Sozin's Comet. The comet is due to return in less than a year, at which time it will increase the Fire Nation's power, allowing them to end the war with a final assault. If Aang is to stop the Fire Nation, he must defeat the Fire Lord before the comet's arrival, and for Aang to have any hope of defeating the Fire Lord, he must first master all 4 elements. It's a hell of a ticking clock. Roku's spirit then briefly possesses Aang's body, repelling Zhao's forces and destroying the temple. Aang is unnerved by the fact that he has to master all elements in under a year. Why doesn't he just learn every language in a week while he's at it? So despite still being a relatively inexperienced waterbender herself, Katara begins teaching Aang everything she knows about waterbending. While in town to buy supplies, she comes across a waterbender firebending scroll owned by pirates and swipes it so that they can both learn its new techniques. Katara struggles to learn the new moves, while Aang picks them up quickly, much to her frustration. Meanwhile, Zuko, always hot on the trail, encounters the pirates and agrees to help them search for the scroll, knowing that it will lead them to the Avatar, which of course leads to the capturing of Aang, Katara, and Sokka. Luckily, the three manage to escape using their newly developed waterbending skills. And also Sokka is there, but he's not a waterbender. Meanwhile, Zuko's crew begins to question his leadership skills, so his uncle Iroh explains to them that the prince didn't get his trademark scar in a training accident as the crew were led to believe, but in an Agni Kai, a type of ceremonial firebending duel with his own father, Fire Lord Ozai, the grandson of Sozin. When Zuko spoke up in a meeting protesting the Fire Nation generals' ends justify the means mentality towards their own soldiers' lives, his father challenged him to Agni Kai as a punishment for such insubordination. And when Zuko refused to fight back, his father burned his face and banished him from the Fire Nation. For the last 3 years of Zuko's life, he's not been allowed to return unless he restored his honor by finding and capturing the Avatar, something no one has been able to do in over 100 years, so until recently, the odds haven't exactly been with Zuko on this one. During this time, Team Avatar arrives at a Fire Nation town that's hosting a festival. Here, the trio learns about the Deserter, a man named Zhang who went AWOL on the Fire Nation army and lived to tell the tale, making him a powerful firebending master who's unaffiliated with the Fire Nation. Unfortunately, Aang has difficulties maintaining the self-discipline required for safe firebending and accidentally burns Katara. However, this leads Katara to discover that she possesses the power of healing. Meanwhile, Admiral Zhao arrives to fight Aang, but Aang escapes him by using Zhao's lack of self-control against him, causing him to burn his own ship. Turns out Zhao's not exactly the master tactician he'd have people believe, and Zhang, being Zhao's former teacher, has always seen right through him. Afterwards, the group journeys to the Northern Water Tribe, where they're welcomed warmly by its citizens. Aang and Katara seek the teachings of Pakku, the Northern Water Tribe's best waterbending master. However, being a stubborn traditionalist, he refuses to teach a woman like Katara in the ways of combat. That is, until he notices Katara's pendant, which was a gift from her mother. Pakku recognizes the necklace as the same one that he gave to his fiancée years earlier, meaning, wait, is Katara his fiancée? Nah, I'm just kidding, but her grandma was. She left him after realizing he was kinda sexist.
Imagine that!
Realizing that it was his stubborn commitment to tradition that drove away his true love in the first place, and impressed with Katara's fighting skills, Pakku finally agrees to train her. Meanwhile, Uncle Iroh helps Zuko fake his death and sneak aboard Zhao's lead ship as his fleet departs for the North Pole. Zhao had previously attempted to assassinate Zuko after Zuko secretly thwarted one of Zhao's attempted captures of the Avatar. After all, if Zhao captures the Avatar, then Zuko can't do it to regain his honor, can he? As the Fire Nation's armada approaches the Northern Water Tribe, the citizens scramble to set up their defenses. Aang believes speaking to the moon and ocean spirits could give him some insight into defeating the Fire Nation. However, once Aang's spirit leaves his body, Zuko arrives and kidnaps Aang's defenseless body just before the Fire Nation begins their attack. The Firebenders manage to infiltrate the fortress of the Northern Water Tribe and raid the city. Aang attempts to return to the spirit world, but since his body has been moved, his spirit rockets across the sky towards the location of his body. This allows Sokka, Katara, and Yue, princess of the Northern Water Tribe, and Sokka's girlfriend, to follow his spirit back to Aang. In order to destroy the moon, thus eliminating the source of the Waterbenders' powers, Admiral Zhao slays the moon spirit Tui in its physical form despite warnings from Iroh to not destroy the moon. What kind of crazy plan is that? Thankfully, Aang returns and slips into the Avatar state, a sort of turbocharged mode where the Avatar is able to channel the knowledge and power of all of their previous incarnations and joins forces with the ocean spirit La to wipe out the Fire Nation armada. After Iroh and Zuko both survive the assault, Zuko confronts and fights an escaping Zhao, while Iroh stays with Team Avatar to try to revive Tui. It's at this point we should probably mention that while Iroh was a renowned Fire Nation general at one point, Iroh is now a good-natured person who doesn't necessarily stand with the Fire Nation so much as he wants to keep his nephew from slipping into the abyss, and therefore doesn't really harbor any ill will toward Team Avatar like Zuko does. It's revealed that the moon spirit touched Princess Yue as a baby, giving her a spark of life. Yue gives that spark back, sacrificing herself to become reincarnated as the moon spirit. Oh, poor Sokka. That's rough, buddy. Zhao is then pulled underwater by the ocean spirit and is cast into the spirit world to wander through the fog of lost souls for all eternity as punishment for his misdeeds. Good lord, at this point I think drowning would have been a better fate for him. Upon hearing the results of the battle, Fire Lord Ozai, back at the Fire Nation, commands Zuko's sister Azula to hunt down her traitorous uncle and brother for failing to capture the Avatar. Book 2, Earth. After their journey to the North Pole, Aang and his friends travel to Omashu, searching for Aang's childhood friend, King Bumi, in hopes that he'll teach young Aang the ways of earthbending. It's also suggested to Aang that he consider fighting the Fire Lord by triggering the Avatar state, since doing so at the North Pole was so effective. However, Aang is later warned by Avatar Roku that if he's killed during the Avatar state, the Avatar spirit will disappear and the line of reincarnation will end forever. To make matters worse, Aang and his friends arrive at Omashu to find it captured, having been renamed New Ozai by Azula. Meanwhile, Zuko and Iroh receive a surprise visit from Azula, who asks them to return home. Zuko, believing his banishment to be over, excitedly agrees, while a more reserved Iroh reluctantly accompanies him to Azula's ship, where they discover her invitation is a ploy to imprison them. They escape, but are forced to live as outcasts because their actions at the North Pole are viewed as treasonous by the Fire Nation. Team Avatar's search for an earthbending teacher takes them to an underground earthbending tournament promoted by a guy named Shin Fu. It's here that they witness a young blind girl named Toph show off formidable earthbending skills. She fights under the secretive moniker the Blind Bandit. Unfortunately, Toph is restricted by her overprotective parents, who keep her isolated in hopes that she'll eventually conform to the social roles of the Earth Kingdom aristocracy. It goes about as well as you'd expect. So Toph runs away from home and joins Team Avatar, but her parents, believing she was kidnapped, pay off Shin Fu and local earthbending teacher Master Yu to retrieve her by any means necessary. Aang begins his earthbending training with Toph, but it doesn't come easy. Avatars naturally have more trouble learning elements that run counter to their own, as the elements are a reflection of their personalities, and the strong, steady willpower required for earthbending is a little difficult for a twinkle-toed air nomad. Elsewhere, Zuko, determined to get stronger, struggles with lightning bending, an advanced form of firebending. His anger keeps him from obtaining the precision required to pull it off, and his frustrations only grow in knowing his father and sister have already mastered the skill. Trying a different approach, Iroh shares his belief that wisdom comes from many sources. He advises young Zuko to study the other elements, and in doing so, he can become a wiser and more balanced individual. To drive the point home, Iroh then teaches Zuko the art of not lightning bending, but redirecting lightning, a technique he originated by training with waterbenders. At an oasis, Team Avatar encounters a professor who tells them about a hidden spirit library in the desert. The group travels into the desert and eventually locates the entrance to the library. Toph, claiming she's never really seen the appeal of books, pun completely intended, elects to stay outside with Appa. Wan Shi Tong, the giant owl spirit who guards the library, lets them in on the condition that they don't use any of the knowledge in the library for war. Sure, no problem. Inside the library, however, Sokka learns something that could end the war. An upcoming solar eclipse will temporarily render the firebenders completely powerless. Unfortunately, Wan Shi Tong refuses to let them leave with this information and sinks the library into the sand. And while all of this is going on, a group of sandbender bandits attack, making away with Appa. Toph, who's learned to use her feet to gauge her surroundings, is marred by the desert sands and is unable to stop them. The rest of Team Avatar makes that out of the library, but the professor decides to stay behind forever and revel in the endless well of knowledge that he's discovered. I mean, I don't know what he thinks he's gonna eat down there, though. I mean, maybe the owl will give it— oh no. With their main mode of transport, Appa, gone, the team is stranded. After a long, exhausting hike through the desert, Aang tracks down the sandbenders who stole Appa and learns that his beloved flying bison was traded to a merchant in Ba Sing Se, the capital of the Earth Kingdom. When Aang learns that Appa's been traded, he gets so angry that he triggers the Avatar state, nearly killing the sandbenders, showing once again the true terrifying power of the Avatar state. The group then travels to the impenetrable walled city of Ba Sing Se on a mission to find Appa and inform the Earth King about the solar eclipse. However, they soon discover that this is no easy feat. They're assigned a liaison, a young woman named Judy, who gives them a tour of the kingdom along with its many disturbing rules, one of which forbids mentioning the war. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. However, the rigid rules aren't the most disturbing thing they encounter within the Earth Kingdom. Team Avatar also discovers the existence of the Dai Li, the secret police force of Ba Sing Se, which enforce the law under the command of their corrupt leader, Long Feng, who appears to know something about Appa. Finally, the group decides to sneak away from their chaperones to find Appa. They discover a facility located at the bottom of Lake Laogai where they uncover a brainwashing operation perpetrated by Long Feng and the Dai Li to control Ba Sing Se from behind the scenes. Zuko, who had been hiding out in Ba Sing Se at the time, helping his uncle manage a tea shop, finds that old habits die hard and tracks Aang down to the facility, but stumbles upon an imprisoned Appa first. He plans to use Appa as a bargaining chip, but his uncle encourages him to free the Sky Bison instead. Surprisingly, Zuko agrees with his uncle. Team Avatar faces off against the Dai Li in an intense battle that ends with the good guys victorious, but not without loss. And afterwards, Aang and Appa are joyously reunited. After discovering the king has been kept in the dark about the war with the Fire Nation, as well as the Dai Li corrupting his kingdom, the group breaks into the Earth King Kuei's palace to warn him about the upcoming eclipse and the conspiracy against him. Though initially unsuccessful, as the king is unaware that there's even a war going on thanks to the Dai Li's propaganda, Team Avatar is ultimately able to expose Long Feng's lies. Long Feng is then promptly arrested for treason, and the Earth King agrees to cooperate with Team Avatar as they prepare for an invasion of the Fire Nation during the solar eclipse. Meanwhile, Zuko falls mysteriously ill, which Iroh believes is caused by his nephew's internal conflict. Zuko struggles with both what's required of him as Prince of the Fire Nation and his true self, whose growth Iroh has been trying to foster for years. Later, Aang travels to the Eastern Air Temple to meet with Guru Patik, who trains him in mastering the Avatar state through unlocking his chakras. During this time, Toph is captured by Shin Fu and Master Yu, remember them? They lock her in an iron case to negate her earthbending powers and start to take her back to her parents. However, they've vastly underestimated Toph's ability as she realizes there are tiny bits of earth within the metal and tears open the enclosure, thus creating a new form of earthbending, metal bending. Back at the Air Temple, Aang slowly unlocks all of his chakras except for the last, which requires he give up all earthly attachments, including his feelings toward others, specifically Katara, which he simply cannot do. He abandons his training with the Guru after sensing Katara is in trouble back at Ba Sing Se. What sort of trouble is Katara in? Well, Azula and her entourage have infiltrated the Earth Kingdom disguised as friends of Team Avatars, the noble warriors of former Avatar Kyoshi. Upon gaining everyone's trust, Azula frees Long Feng, captures Katara, and takes over the Dai Li, having Zuko imprisoned as well. Zuko officially meets Katara for the first time and discovers they have a lot in common. Katara even considers lifting some of Zuko's burden by healing his scar with her healing powers and a small amount of water from the spirit oasis of the Northern Water Tribe. It's basically super healing water, and Katara only has a small vial of it. At that moment, Aang, aided by Iroh, attempts to free Zuko and Katara. Iroh implores Zuko to consider the path he's on, in hopes that the prince will abandon his brutal past and become enlightened. Much to Iroh's dismay, though, Zuko chooses to attack the Avatar instead, and a battle ensues. Aang enters the Avatar state just as Azula strikes him with lightning, essentially killing him and severing his connection to the Avatar spirit. Launching into the offensive, Iroh delays the Fire Nation's forces just long enough for Team Avatar to escape. Iroh then surrenders and is taken prisoner as a traitor to the Fire Nation, and Katara uses her healing powers as well as that spirit oasis water in order to resuscitate Aang, but consequences of being killed in the Avatar state remain. Aang is no longer able to enter the Avatar state at all. Book 3. Fire. Aang awakens to find himself and his friends aboard a stolen Fire Nation ship. He's still very weak, sporting a wicked scar on his torso, and to top it all off, everyone outside the ship believes him to be dead. Again. Though Aang's friends assure him that this is a good thing, because if the Fire Nation thinks he's dead, they won't be chasing him down, nor will they expect their impending invasion. Back in the Fire Nation, Fire Lord Ozai finally makes an in-person appearance to welcome his children home and praise them for taking out the Avatar. However, Zuko secretly suspects that Aang is still alive and seeks out a terrifying-looking assassin to finish the job as a failsafe. Sokka finally admits that his lack of bending skills have made him feel like a bit of an outcast, so to ensure that he can hold his own in the oncoming battles, he decides to build upon his sword-fighting skills. Sokka eventually convinces Piandao, a renowned Fire Nation swordmaster, to be his instructor. Piandao puts Sokka through the ringer, but delivers on his promise and even helps him forge his own sword out of the metal from a meteor. After all, one sword is an extension of oneself. Sokka's guilt grows, though, and he eventually confesses to Piandao that he is not in fact from the Fire Nation. A bold move, considering the Fire Nation's attitudes towards anyone who's not Fire Nation. Piandao responds by attacking Sokka, but after he proves himself in an intense sword duel, Piandao reveals that this was his final test, assuring Sokka that he already knew he wasn't Fire Nation, but trained him nonetheless because he truly believed that the way of the sword belongs to all nations. On Eclipse Day, many friends and allies reunite with Team Avatar to launch an invasion on the Fire Nation. Their invasion forces rely heavily upon several forms of bending and even some aquatic vehicles, but with their combined efforts, they're able to circumvent the Fire Nation's defenses and infiltrate the capital, waging a grueling assault on the place. However, once Aang finally reaches the Fire Lord's palace, he discovers that no one is there. After all, Azula had already learned of their plans after infiltrating Ba Sing Se and gaining the Earth King's trust. The eclipse begins as Sokka, Aang, and Toph search for the Fire Lord. They find Azula in an underground bunker, and she provokes them into chasing her to stall them until the eclipse is over. Meanwhile, Zuko at this point has learned many things about himself since returning home, including the fact that he is the great-grandson of Avatar Roku on his mother's side. In light of this information, as well as growing disdain towards Ozai's plans, Zuko confronts his father and tells him that not only does the Avatar still live, but he's decided to join forces with him. Before Zuko can leave, though, Ozai offers to tell him what happened to his mother. Fire Lord Azulon, Zuko's grandfather, had ordered Ozai to kill Zuko as a punishment for Ozai mocking the death of his brother Iroh's son, Lu Ten. In order to save her son's life, Zuko's mother created a treasonous plan to poison Azulon so that Ozai could take the throne. The plan worked, worked, and Zuko's mother was banished for her efforts.
You know, I'm starting to think that this Fire Lord Ozai is not such a great guy.
Suddenly, the eclipse ends and Ozai attacks Zuko with his firebending finally back. Using Iroh's technique, Zuko redirects Ozai's lightning back at him and retreats to free his uncle. However, upon arriving at his cell, he discovers that Iroh has already broken out. At this point, the invasion force is exhausted and has no choice but to surrender. Aang then flees with his friends to the Western Air Temple, with Zuko trailing them on a stolen war balloon. There, Zuko desperately tries to prove himself to Team Avatar and wishes to atone for all of his past mistakes. It's only after he helps save them from Sparky Boom Man, or Combustion Man, or whatever you want to call him, the very assassin that he had previously hired to kill them, that the crew accepts him as Aang's firebending teacher and the newest member of Team Avatar. Except Katara. Katara's still a little salty about the whole following them and constantly betraying their trust and helping Azula kill Aang thing. But a quick field trip with him and a confrontation with her mother's killer eventually convinces Katara that Zuko's really changed. Unfortunately, once Zuko tries to teach Aang how to firebend, he discovers that he's lost his ability to bend now that he no longer fuels his bending with his own rage. Toph suggests that they learn from the original teachers of firebending, the mighty dragons, but supposedly Iroh killed the last dragon long ago during his metaphorical past life as a general. Recalling that the dragons imparted their knowledge to the Sun Warriors, Zuko and Aang travel to the ruins of the Sun Warrior civilization, where they discover a tribe of Sun Warriors still exists. In order to learn the true meaning of firebending, they must first carry a sacred flame up a mountain and be judged by the masters, who turn out to be a pair of surviving dragons. After being deemed worthy, the two dragons teach that firebending is a source of life, not destruction. The Sun Warriors reveal that Iroh lied about the extinction of the dragons after his own training. They then ask Zuko and the rest to do the same to protect the remaining members of the species. Team Avatar leaves with both Aang and Zuko firebending better than ever. With Sozin's comet on the horizon, Aang decides that it's probably best to fight the Fire Lord after it passes, since, you know, that would be when the Fire Nation is most powerful, but Zuko derails the plan when he reveals that Ozai intends to use his comet-enhanced firebending to destroy the entire Earth Kingdom continent during that time. The gang begins frantically training Aang to make up for lost time, with the end goal of stopping the Fire Nation's assault on the Earth Kingdom. Needless to say, the kid starts to get a wee bit stressed out, not to mention conflicted at the idea that in order to stop the Fire Lord, Aang has to kill him, which goes against many of his teachings and philosophies. That night, Aang dreams of a mysterious island that appears in the middle of the sea. The next day, Aang awakens on the island he'd seen in his dreams. Much to the worry of Team Avatar, because Aang has vanished at a pretty important moment. Meanwhile, Ozai names Azula the successor to the Fire Nation throne, effectively making her the leader of the Fire Nation now, while Ozai declares himself Phoenix King, ruler of the world. A bit presumptuous, but that's just how he is, I guess. On the island, Aang discovers that he's on top of a giant lion turtle, who gives him the insight and guidance he's been seeking. Meanwhile, Team Avatar enlists the help of a bounty hunter named June to find Aang, but when June is unable to locate their friend, Zuko asks her to find his uncle Iroh instead. Her tracking skills take them to the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, where they're reunited with Iroh, along with King Bumi, Zhang Zhang, Master Pakku, and Master Piandao? What is this? What's going on? Turns out that all of these old guys are members of the Order of the White Lotus, a secret society led by Iroh dedicated to sharing wisdom regardless of nationality or politics. The team decides to split up to help stall the Fire Nation's plans. Zuko and Katara set out to handle Azula. Sokka, Toph, and Suki, one of the aforementioned Kyoshi warriors, but, you know, it's actually her this time, will attempt to deflect the Fire Nation airships headed towards the Earth Kingdom, and Iroh is to lead the White Lotus Society in the liberation of Ba Sing Se. Sozin's comet arrives, and Ozai prepares for battle. Zuko and Katara confront Azula, but as Azula had been steadily unraveling ever since her return to the Fire Nation, she stubbornly challenges her brother to Agni Kai. Zuko initially prevails, but is struck down when Azula fights dirty and fires a lightning bolt at Katara, which he dives in front of. During this time, Aang begins to duel Ozai, but narrowly avoids his powerful attacks, which are augmented by the comet. After a long battle, the Order of the White Lotus successfully liberates Ba Sing Se, while Sokka, Suki, and Toph stop the attack on the Earth Kingdom. Katara fights Azula, freezing her in ice and chaining her to the ground. She then revives Zuko with her now exceptionally strong healing abilities. Katara got like super OP throughout the series. Remember the scene in the Southern Raiders where she just literally suspended the rain around her and turned it into icicles? I'm not complaining, that was an amazing scene. I love that episode, it's just an observation. During their duel, Ozai overpowers Aang with his enhanced firebending, pushing him back first into a jut of rock. But the rock hits Aang in exactly the same place that Azula's lightning did, miraculously unblocking his chakras and restoring his connection to the Avatar spirit. Nice. Aang enters the Avatar state and easily overwhelms Ozai, yet refuses to kill him. Instead, he employs a much more honorable technique that he learned from the lion turtle back when he went missing: energy bending. By using an ancient form of bending, Aang is able to alter Ozai's energy and permanently strip him of all firebending abilities, thus defeating the Phoenix King and saving the world without bloodshed. Days later, Ozai and Azula are imprisoned, the newly appointed Fire Lord Zuko declares the war over, and Team Avatar have a little celebration at Iroh's tea shop in Ba Sing Se. Aang and Katara slip out to share a quiet moment together where they finally embrace each other and share a kiss under the sunset. And as we learn in The Legend of Korra, the Avatar's friendships go on to transcend lifetimes. I found my Water Tribe scarf, which I'm going to try to put on without ruining all of the audio coming from the mic. It's also 1,000 degrees, so I'm going to record the rest of this video in the booth where it's colder. Korra, the woman, the bender, the legend. Literally. The Legend of Korra covered a lot of ground in its 4 seasons, and I know, only 4 seasons with our favorite fiery, hot-headed protagonist. Cue the waterworks. I'm Jacob with ChannelFrederator, and we said we were gonna do it, so here it is, the complete Legend of Korra timeline. If you're watching this video and you haven't seen our last Avatar video we did about The Last Airbender, you should go watch that just so that you'll get the full Avatar timeline experience from us. And going forward, we're gonna presume that you've already seen that video or have seen Avatar The Last Airbender. We're not going to explain who certain characters are, you know? And also, you know, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications, and you know all this stuff. All right. Before we get started, we want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, Audible. Stay tuned at the end of the video for some Legend of Korra themed recommendations from the Audible library. Real quick, we have decided in this video to omit a lot of the B-plot romantic storylines, because those could just be put in their own video entirely. And I mean, to be fair, we didn't really spend a whole lot of time on that in the last video either. Remember when Suki just kind of turned up out of nowhere right at the end of the series? All right, tangent done, and with Aang gone, let's get to this new Avatar that I've heard so much about. Book 1, Air. As a toddler, Korra discovers that she's the next Avatar, an all-powerful bender capable of wielding all 4 elements. The Order of the White Lotus visits the Southern Water Tribe to confirm her powers and finds out that their next Avatar is a high-energy, headstrong little girl. But as Korra says in episode 1, she's the Avatar and you gotta deal with it. Speaking of Avatars, remember Aang, everyone's favorite airbender and Avatar from the original series? Well, he and Katara, unsurprisingly, had kids. Eldest son Bumi, named after his childhood friend who became a commander of the United Forces, daughter and renowned healer Kaya, and last but not least, Tenzin, who became an airbending master just like his old man. Tenzin visits Korra's tribe to begin her training as an airbender, but he's abruptly called back to Republic City for political reasons, Republic City being the capital city of the United Republic of Nations founded by Fire Lord Zuko and Avatar Aang, a bustling city where all are welcome. After Tenzin's departure, Korra, now a young woman, already adept in the ways of waterbending, earthbending, and firebending, loads up her polar bear dog Naga and heads to Republic City to pursue her airbending training, you know, to round out the set. Until she promptly gets arrested, that is. In her defense, she was trying to stop a crime. What's a little massive collateral damage now and again? Lin Beifong, daughter of everyone's favorite blind bandit Toph, has become the city's chief of police. Lin warns her to keep her head down. So Korra signs up for the extremely high-profile sport of pro-bending, where teams try to knock each other out of a ring in front of roaring crowds. Brothers Mako and Bolin welcome her onto their team, the Fire Ferrets, after their waterbender quits. Mako handles firebending, Bolin takes care of the earth, and Korra gets back to basics as a plain old waterbender. Even after she outs herself as the Avatar, she's allowed to continue so long as she only uses waterbending. The Fire Ferrets make it to the championships, but they need to raise hella coin to buy in, so Bolin takes up a gig with a gang called the Triads. When he goes missing, Mako and Korra's daring rescue lands them in a turf war between the Triads and the Equalists, a group that strongly opposes the use of bending at all, believing that for everyone to truly be equal, bending must be eradicated. Mid-fight, Korra has her first run-in with chi blocking, a powerful attack that leaves her temporarily unable to use her bending, naturally. She and Mako track the goons to a rally led by Amon, an equalist rocking a totally sweet mask. Amon trumpets his anti-bending rhetoric and demonstrates his ability to remove someone's bending, a power only performed previously by the Avatar. When the town council hears about a revolution brewing, Councilman Tarlok starts a special task force to take down the equalists. Korra initially refuses to join, but Tarlok ambushes her her and forces her into it. The task force enjoys a successful first raid, giving Korra the guts to challenge Amon to a solo duel on Aang Memorial Island. Now, I know I said I wouldn't get into the relationship stuff, but Mako does have a meet-cute with Asami Sato, heiress to the Future Industries fortune. Her father offers to sponsor the Fire Ferrets, securing their spot in the finals. Now that the Fire Ferrets' very important and pressing financial problems are settled, back to the quashing of this underground revolution or whatever. Korra shows up for her fight with Amon, only to be ambushed by a group of chi blockers and sent crawling back to the city. Amon promises a confrontation and broadcasts threats before the final match, demanding the city end pro-bending. But what's gonna let a little bit of terror threats get in the way of sports, right? Well, turns out Amon wasn't kidding. The final match is swarmed by chi blockers. Amon gives a speech to the bending elite, but while he's busy monologuing, Lin saves Korra. Tarlok blames Lin for not protecting the city and calls for her resignation. With her job on the line, Lin puts on her detective hat and finds equalist propaganda and chi blockers in the Cabbage Corp warehouse.
Oh, my cabbages!
While staying at the Sato house, Korra overhears Mr. Sato conspiring about the Cabbage Corp cover-up on the phone. An informant confirms Korra's fears and reveals a secret equalist hideout beneath the Sato mansion. Team Avatar 2.0 finds out it's a trap, a cellar made of pure platinum, a metal immune to bending. Mr. Sato is waiting for them down there, along with a horde of platinum mecha tanks. Asami learns that her father is an equalist, radicalized by the death of his wife at the hands of a bender. He only sponsored the Fire Ferrets as a way to set up Korra for the attack on the stadium. Everyone fights, it gets messy as you'd expect, and the Fire Ferrets and friends barely escape. Lin decides to resign as police chief so she can pursue the equalists outside of the law. Her replacement, Sai Khan, is essentially a puppet for Tarlok's task force. Suspicious. This pushes Korra over the edge and she quits her task force gig. To get some much needed distance, Mako, Asami, and Bolin move in with Korra and Tenzin on Air Temple Island. Later, the group goes into the city to beat up some equalists, as you do. As soon as they round up a group of jailbreakers, Tarlok shows up and tells them to get out of his way. The next day, Tarlok sets a new law to outlaw equalists and puts a mandatory curfew on any non-benders. Team Avatar responds to a report of armed and dangerous equalists, only to find the police forces rounded up a group of non-benders and cut off power to their neighborhood. When Korra tells Tarlok to let them go, he escalates. Korra and her friends fight back, which gets them arrested. She goes with Tenzin to Sai Khan to get her friends released, but Sai Khan refuses, so Korra goes to confront Tarlok personally. They fight, and in a shocking twist, Tarlok overpowers her with bloodbending, kidnaps her, and traps her in a platinum box. On the bright side, that gives Korra some alone time to meditate on visions of past incarnations that have been bubbling up. She visits the memories of Aang arresting the crime boss Yakone, a bloodbender with the unique ability of being able to bloodbend without the aid of a full moon, though Aang took his bending away like Amon did at the rally. And what do you know, it turns out that Yakone is Tarlok's father. Tarlok frames the equalists for kidnapping Korra. Lin breaks Bolin, Mako, and Asami free from jail to retrace the path where the equalists took Bolin before the rally, hoping to find Korra. Instead, they find the equalists' prison where Lin's captured officers are being held and uncover Tarlok's lie. They rescue the officers and break out of the prison to hunt down Tarlok. Tenzin, Lin, and Team Avatar minus Korra accuse Tarlok of taking Korra, but he just bloodbends his way out and returns to the platinum box. And it's a shame that Metal isn't soundproof because he monologues at Korra about his father and his plan to skip town with her as a hostage. Amon shows up and Tarlok bloodbends Amon's chi blockers, but it has no effect on Amon himself, who promptly takes Tarlok's bending, but Korra escapes with Naga. With Team Avatar and Lin out of the city, the equalists target and capture all of the council members except Tenzin. Amon moves into the city with airships and bombs the streets. Tenzin wires the general of the United Forces right before the power goes out. Equalists gas the building, forcing Tenzin and the police to evacuate, but they encounter mecha tanks and are taken hostage. Before they can drive away, the reunited Team Avatar rescues Tenzin. His wife, Pema, goes into labor as Amon's forces descend on Air Temple Island. She gives birth to Rohan while Lin and the other children fight off the equalists, but the airships keep coming and everyone evacuates Air Temple Island. Lin, who is riding with Tenzin and his family, chooses to sacrifice herself to destroy the airships hunting Tenzin. Unfortunately, Amon captures her and takes away her bending. By the time General Iroh of the United Forces sends troops to Republic City, Amon is taken over and has made all bending illegal. And no, not that Iroh, this Iroh is Zuko's grandson, though he is voiced by Dante Bosco, who played Zuko in the original series, so now this is just needlessly confusing. The Equalists engage with the United Forces and get the upper hand. Korra saves General Iroh from the ensuing wreckage, and he, Asami, and Bolin head towards Mr. Sato's secret airfield to sabotage the Equalist's aircraft. Meanwhile, Korra and Mako go out to fight Amon, but instead they find an imprisoned Tarlok, who reveals that Amon is his brother, a Northern Water Tribe member and fellow bloodbender. Their father Yakone was abusive and asked them to practice bloodbending on each other. Tarlok wouldn't do it, so when Yakone tried to bloodbend Tarlok as punishment, Amon, aka Noatuk, his real name, stepped in and bloodbended? Amon did the bloodbending thing to Yakone. Ugh. Korra and Mako go to Amon's next rally to expose him as a bender, thereby discrediting him to his legions of followers. But mid-plan, Amon takes off his mask to reveal a huge scar across his face. This substantiates the propaganda he told about being attacked by a firebender as a child. Korra and Mako prepare to escape, but then Amon brings up his next group of benders to equalize. It's Tenzin and his family, everyone! Meanwhile, the trio at the Hiroshi airfield have been busy. Mr. Sato intercepted Iroh's SOS message and captured them. Luckily, Naga breaks them out of prison, and they chase after the planes and Mechatrons headed to intercept the United Forces reinforcements. Bolin and Mako destroy the mechas and the air fleet, and Asami takes her father into custody. Back in the city, Mako and Korra free Tenzin and the kids, only to come face to face with Amon. He bloodbends them into submission and takes away Korra's bending abilities, but because Korra hadn't unlocked her airbending power prior to being equalized, it wasn't affected. She's able to use it to punt Amon into a river, which washes away his stage makeup scar. And when he waterbends to save himself in front of all of his Equalist followers, it's not a great look for him. Amon and Tarlok run away together, but Tarlok blows up their boat, killing them both. Team Avatar takes Korra to Katara, but after much effort, she can't heal her bending. After a lot of angst, the spirit of Aang and the other avatars visit Korra, and she regains her power along with the power to heal others' energy. Korra heals Lin's bending, and they set out to heal the bending of all of those who have had it taken away. Season 1, more like season done. Sorry, I'll hand in my resignation after this video. Book 2, Spirits. After defeating Amon and electing Raiko the new president of Republic City, Korra and the Benders travel to the South Pole to the Glacier Spirit Festival. Tenzin wants to take her to see the other air temples so that Korra can continue working on her airbending. They meet Korra's father, Tonraq, and her uncle, the chief of the Northern Water Tribe, Unalaq. Oh, and also his two creepy-as-hell twin children. Their names are Eska and the other one. Actually, for the sake of credibility, I better mention his name is Desna. The whole group of Benders is attacked in the night by an angry spirit. Unalaq dispels it using spirit bending and suggests Korra join him in the North Pole to learn airbending and spirit bending from him simultaneously. Tenzin and Tonraq think it's a bad idea, but Korra decides to go anyway, bringing Mako, Bolin, and Asami along, cause, like, what else they got going on? That's a rhetorical question. I know Mako's busy doing police stuff. Unalaq tells Korra that he wants her to open a portal to the spirit world to stop the Everstorm, a plague of restless spirits which are attacking the Southern Water Tribe. He reveals the Everstorm was started by Korra's dad after he destroyed a spirit forest during a barbarian attack. So Korra opens the spirit portal against everyone's advice, naturally. But when they get back to civilization, she finds that Unalaq is shipping in fleets of Northern Water Tribe troops to help the Southern Tribe, when all he really wants is a civil war. And boy, how does he get it. But first, Asami and Bolin convince a super rich Southern Tribe shipping millionaire Varric to partner with the failing Future Industries. Varric is only interested in making his movers, though, which is Avatar's version of, you know, movies. They're moving, talking pictures, you get it. Anyway, a deal is struck. Back in the South, Unalaq jails some Southern rebels and Korra's parents. When Korra steps in, it's revealed that everything, the portal, the civil war, the arrests, were all arranged by Unalaq to take control. With Varric's help, Team Avatar jailbreaks everyone and returns to Republic City to get the new president's support for the Southerners' cause. He remains neutral, even when a protest march held by the Southern Tribe is bombed. In Republic City, Mako and Asami enlist the Triple Threat Triad to help uncover who's been behind the bombings, but they turn out to be double agents. An encounter with a pyrotechnics expert on one of Varric's movers sets leads Mako to suspect the mogul, but Varric buys out Future Industries and puts Baby in a corner. And by that, I mean he plants evidence that Mako was the bomber and gets him carted off to jail. Damn, guess we'll never hear from him again. During Mako and Asami's crime noir spin-off, Korra is attacked by Unalaq's creepy twins, but a dark spirit swallows her before they can end it. Korra washes up on the banks of the Fire Nation with no memory. Eventually, Korra connects with the spirit of the first Avatar, Wan. Remember him from way back at the beginning of our last Avatar video? Anyway, Wan tells her to close the portal for good and then warns her about the dark spirit Vatu locked behind the portal during a moment of harmonic convergence. Turns out Unalaq's master plan was to use Korra to open both the necessary spirit portals to free Vatu and then and fuse with his spirit to become all-powerful, because another harmonic convergence is coming up real soon. Korra returns to Tenzin and explains her plan to enter the spirit world and close the portal from the inside. Tenzin reluctantly sends his daughter Jinora to help guide Korra into the spirit world, as Jinora has always been particularly attuned to the spirit world. Tenzin finally agrees after repeated assurance from Jinora that they'll be fine. Unalaq also insists his twins to help open the portals, but with way less regard for their well-being. In the spirit world, Korra and Jinora get separated. Aang's good friend Iroh, yes, that Iroh, finds Korra and teaches her that she's a bridge between the spirit world and reality, and that her emotions affect reality. Jinora finds a library and hits the books to discover where Vaatu is imprisoned, the Tree of Time. Unfortunately, Jinora gets captured by Unalaq. There's a whole lot of X captures Y in this series. Korra goes to the Tree of Time, but Unalaq threatens to trap Jinora forever in the spirit world unless Korra sets Vaatu free. She does, but Jinora is stolen by spirits anyway. Unalaq spirit bends Korra, and just when it seems she's donezo, a dragon hawk that Korra helped heal swoops in and carries her back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Sorry. The Northern Water Tribe seems to be winning the Civil War. The attack at the premiere of a mover that Bolin is starring in, just as Varrick tries to kidnap President Raiko. Bolin fights them off though and rescues the leading lady. And the president, I guess. But this foiled plot still isn't enough to get the president involved in the war, so Tonraq fights Unalaq himself. Team Avatar and Tenzin's family get pulled into the fight, as do the twins, but all the good guys are shot down and captured, except for one of our old friends, Boomy. He breaks them out. Korra rushes to enter the spirit world to find Jinora and close the portal, but she's too late. Vaatu gets out of the Tree of Time, and now it's final showdown time. Korra must stop Unalaq from fusing with Vaatu and becoming the Dark Avatar. Korra gets back to her punting ways and punts Unalaq out of the spirit world for Mako and Bolin to deal with in the real world, while Tenzin and the adults trek through the spirit forest and ultimately find Jinora. Unalaq and twins overpower Mako and Bolin, and Unalaq pops back into the spirit world to fuse with Vaatu and become the Dark Avatar. I feel like I just said that. It's almost as if that was kind of a pointless diversion. Whatever. Unalaq's fusion leaves him with a triple-tone voice and spooky red eyes, as you do. Unalaq and Korra duke it out in Avatar mode, and the Dark Avatar severs Korra's connection to the spirit inside of her, Rava. Just when it looks like Rava is completely crushed, Tenzin's sister Kaya heals Korra and she meditates herself into a giant blue glowing astral projection. What else could be next but a traditional kaiju battle? Korra's light overcomes the dark handily, but then things go south. Luckily, Jinora comes down from the sky and shines light into the Dark Avatar, illuminating Rava and allowing Korra to pull her out of Vaatu's grasp. Then Korra tidily spirit bends Vaatu and Unalaq away and rushes back to the spirit world to fuse with Rava and become the Avatar once more. Korra restores order to the world and, in a bold move honestly, decides to keep the portals to the spirit world open so that spirits can just hang with humans. We'll see if that's a good call in Book 3, which we're gonna do right now. Book 3. Change! Surprise! It's not a great idea to keep spirits and humans together in the same place. The spirits are growing vines all over the city, and only 3 weeks after vanquishing Vaatu, Korra's approval rating is tanking, and the president banishes her from Republic City. Whoops. More importantly, some people have had airbending abilities awakened in them all throughout the city and world, a mite more than there used to be, which ranged from 1 to like 5. So she leaves with Tenzin to find all of the people who woke up with airbending powers. It's something to do, right? Meanwhile, a dangerous prisoner named Zahir breaks out with his newly acquired airbending skills. Zahir is part of the Red Lotus, an anarchist group that wants to end the White Lotus and the Avatar altogether. Luckily, Lord Zuko hops on a dragon in an attempt to slow down the Red Lotus. Team Avatar starts off in the Earth Kingdom, where they realize that no one is that jazzed to become part of the newly rebirthed air nomads. They do recruit one kid though, Kai, a wayward youth who turns out to be more trouble than he's worth. When the team gets to Ba Sing Se, still the Earth Nation capital, Mako and Bolin discover that they have an extended family tree. Team Avatar meets with the Queen and slowly finds out that she's been imprisoning new airbenders to form an army. Jinora astral projects and finds where they're hidden under the Earth Temple, and they plan a classic Team Avatar jailbreak. The Queen considers this to be an act of war, joining a long line of Korra's current enemies. Tenzin takes the new airbenders and trains them at the Northern Air Temple, while Korra continues the search. With Zahir and his minions after Korra, Lin tags along as Korra's bodyguard as they head to Zaofu, home of the Metal Clan. There they meet Opal, a new airbender and Lin's niece. Opal convinces Bolin and Korra to learn metal bending while they're there. Back at the Air Temple, Zahir shows up with a newly shaven head and face under the alias Yoru, hoping to collect intel on Korra. He snoops around Tenzin's study until Kaya recognizes him as Zahir. They fight and Zahir escapes to track down Korra at Zaofu. Team Avatar has a run-in with our old pal Varrick, who's developing a high-speed rail or whatever wacky thing he's up to. Lin is stressed and injured, dealing with repressed memories of her half-sister, but they hash it out and Lin convinces Opal to head to the Air Temple for training. Zahir and co make their way to Zaofu and try to kidnap Korra. They fail, and Korra learns that Aiwei, the advisor to Lin's half-sister, is in cahoots with Zahir. Aiwei escapes and Team Avatar leaves to track him down. Korra chases him to the spirit world only to come face to face with Zahir himself. Zahir tells Korra that Unalaq was part of the Red Lotus, which is why he's after Korra. They want to take out all of the world leaders and establish anarchy. Meanwhile, Asami, Bolin, and Mako battle Zahir's comrades trying to protect Korra's physical body, but they're unsuccessful and they're all kidnapped. What a shock. The Red Lotus has Bolin and Mako, and Asami and Korra are being delivered to the Earth Queen via airship. The Red Lotus meets with the Earth Queen to trade the location of the Airbenders and their hostages for Korra. The Earth Queen agrees, but Asami and Korra break out of their prison and they commandeer the airship, which crashes into the desert. When the Queen cannot produce Korra, Zahir airbends the air out of the Queen's lungs and suffocates her to death, which is the most metal death I've ever seen portrayed in any show ever. Well, except that it wasn't metal that was used. It was... never mind. It was nuts! He then announces Amon style that the revolution is afoot. Zahir sends a message to Korra through Bolin. Turn yourself in or the Red Lotus will take down the air temple. Korra and Asami head back into the city on a pretty nifty little sandboat they made together, and I know I said no beat plots, but sparks are flying, y'all! They run into Lord Zuko, Tanrock, and Lin in a desert town. Bolin and Mako break their extended family out of Ba Sing Se and meet up with Korra, so now the whole gang's back together. Everyone heads to Zaofu to radio Tenzin and warn him, but they're too late. The Red Lotus has already made it to the air temple, and everyone is taken except for Kai. The team hightails it to the air temple, and Korra gives herself up in exchange for the airbenders. Zahir double-crosses her, though. Shocker. And Gazan, the Red Lotus earthbender, traps Team Avatar in the temple. Thankfully, Bolin lava bends to get them out, which was a bold strategy considering Bolin didn't know he could lava bend until right just now. But their efforts are for naught, as Zahir takes off flying with Korra as his prisoner. Like, literally flying like a dang Dragon Ball Z character. That's what happens when you let go of your earthly tether. Amid all this madness, we're properly introduced to some random captain named Kuvira while holding on a close-up of her for uncomfortably long. Well, that was weird. I don't know why they would do that for some random minor character. Zahir and his minions metal bend poison into Korra, slowly forcing her into an avatar state so that they can kill her and end the cycle of the avatar. Kai and the gang rush to her aid while the poison Korra experiences hallucinations of her past foes, Amon, Unalaq, and Vatu. Korra goes into the avatar state, but she fights back, breaking loose and fighting off each of the criminals. Zahir tries to airbend the air out of Korra, but all of the airbenders create a massive whirlwind led by Jinora, which breaks his concentration. With the aid of the whirlwind, Korra whips her chain around Zahir's ankle, violently grounding them both. It seems as though Korra is dead, but Lin and her half-sister Suyin metal bend the poison out. Well, most of it at least. In the final moments of the season, Korra is alive, but bound to a wheelchair. Also, Jinora gets her super badass arrow tats, which is something that we can all celebrate. Book 4, Balance. 3 years go by. Everyone is moving on with their lives. Mako is the new Earth Prince's bodyguard. The Earth Prince is kind of a dingle. Bolin is working for Kuvira, the interim leader of the Earth Kingdom, who isn't exactly ready to give up her power to this Prince Wu. Oh, I see where this is going. And Asami is busy inventing a whole bunch of stuff with future industries. Meanwhile, Korra's been doing frustrating physical therapy with Katara, just trying to get back on her feet. After 2 years, she decides to leave the South Pole for Republic City once again. On the way there, she suffers some embarrassing defeats and decides on a new look. Changes her clothes, cuts her hair, that whole game. Clearly it was the ponytail that was stopping her from entering the Avatar state. I don't know, is that even a ponytail or is that considered something else? I don't know hairstyles. Anyway, Korra even looks for answers in the spirit world but comes up blank. There's no connecting her with the Avatar spirit. She lies and says that she's in Republic City reunited with her friends, but really just goes all eat, pray, love and backpacks around looking for Rava or an answer or anything. She's hallucinating visions of her old self in avatar mode around every corner. Or is she? She meets a small dog that can see the hallucination, so she must not be losing it. She follows the dog to the swamp and realizes that it's a spirit, but not one who cares enough to save Korra from a crushing defeat by her own avatar apparition. She's knocked out, pulled into quicksand, and wakes up in the home of everyone's favorite tiny green swamp-dwelling energy wielder. No, not Yoda or Shrek, but the return of everyone's favorite Toph Beifong. She calls Korra Twinkle Toes. It's just an adorably epic scene. Meanwhile, upon discovering that Korra is missing, Tenzin sends all of his children, Jinora, Milo, and Iki, to find Korra. Well, all of his children except Rohan, because he's like 3. The world needs her, but Korra is still out in the swamps, physically and emotionally. Korra asks Toph to remove the last of Zahir's metal poison from her veins so that she can reconnect with the Avatar state, but Toph encourages Korra to find balance and expel the poison herself. You know, like the title of this season. Tenzin's kids find them, imploring Korra to come back and stop Kuvira's power grab. For their sake, our hero faces down some intense PTSD flashbacks and metal bends the poison out of her own body to reconnect with the Avatar state. Nice. Now that Korra's back in business, she heads directly to Zaofu to challenge Kuvira. There, Varric is experimenting with harvesting raw energy from spirit vines, albeit unsuccessfully. He stops his experiments after realizing their devastating power, but Kuvira threatens to kill him if he doesn't keep working. Suyin, the head of Zaofu, rejects Kuvira's order to become part of the Empire, and Kuvira declares war. After ages and ages of "Are we the baddies" pontificating, Bolin finally gets smart about Kuvira's totalitarian ways and takes off with Varric and Zhu Li, his lab assistant. Korra asks Kuvira to back down, and she refuses, and at this point Suyin is already hatching a plan to put an end to Kuvira. When she and her sons try to kill Kuvira, they're taken hostage and the city is ordered to surrender. Korra takes a final swing at diplomacy, but Kuvira challenges Korra to one-on-one combat. Korra nearly wins, but another traumatizing flashback gives Kuvira the upper hand, and Tenzin's kids have to ferry Korra to safety. Meanwhile, Zhu Li betrays Varric and Bolin and gets them all captured. Bolin and Varric are forced to research the Spirit Vine bomb, which works in their favor when Varric sets it to blow up the lab, destroying the research and giving them an escape. They set off to warn Republic City about the weapon. In anticipation of her new weapon's unveiling, Kuvira has troops harvesting Spirit Vines for ammunition. The Spirit Vines aren't thrilled with this and start abducting people in retaliation. Even the Vines are kidnapping people now. I wasn't kidding about the X captures Y thing. Jinora goes in for the rescue and ends up getting trapped herself. On the home front, Varric and Bolin make it to the capital and warn everyone of the bomb Kuvira is developing. Bolin, Opal, and Lin set out to rescue Suyin and her sons from Kuvira, while Asami and Varric team up to create flying mecha suits. Prince Wu leads the evacuation of the city, and Korra fails to convince the spirits to help defend Republic City. Behind enemy lines, Zhu Li reveals that she was a double agent for Team Avatar all along and attempts to sabotage Kuvira's weapon. Luckily, Suyin, Lin, and Bolin are breaking the prisoners out of Kuvira's fortress, and Zhu Li escapes with them. They head back to Republic City, where Korra is hitting a wall on the whole spirit world defense thing, but stands firm on her refusal to build Spirit Vine counterweapons. The recently returned crew fills in President Raiko on Kuvira's plan to attack in 2 weeks, and everyone agrees they've got to destroy the bomb before it can get to the city. But Kuvira's army starts marching a week before schedule. Kuvira has mounted the super weapon onto a giant mecha suit, which she is driving. Kuvira advances on the city and takes out the warships. Seeing his city in flames, Raiko surrenders. Kuvira sends her fiancé Batar to broker a deal, but Korra takes him hostage with an ultimatum: stop the advance on Republic City, or she'll keep him away from Kuvira forever. Batar begs his fiancé to stand down, but she uses his location to mow them all down. I guess the heart wants what it wants, and in Kuvira's case, it wants dictatorship. It looks like things are over for Republic City, but in true Avatar style, Korra's not down for the count just yet. They try blinding the mech, tripping it, and hitting it with electromagnetic pulses. As a last resort, Lin gets Asami's father, Mr. Sato, out of jail to mount plasma saws onto the flying mecha suits. That way they can cut a hole in the mech and disable the suit from the inside. It's a great plan, except for the part where Mr. Sato sacrifices himself and dies. Once inside, they tear apart the machine. Suyin and Lin take down the gun arm, Bolin and Mako disable the power grid, and Korra takes on Kuvira for the last time. The giant mecha suit blows up and the parts come crashing down. Pursued by Korra, Kuvira finds the giant arm in the spirit forest and takes her shot, but she loses control. Both women land directly in the line of fire, and Korra shields them, redirecting the weapon's energy into the sky. The blast creates a new portal, and Korra and Kuvira tumble into the spirit world. In a climactic heart-to-heart, Korra convinces Kuvira to end it. The whole lust for power thing, not like her life or anything like that. Back in reality, Kuvira finally orders her troops to stand down and is promptly arrested. The villain is defeated, balance is restored, and Korra and Asami walk off into a spirit world honeymoon hand in hand.